Some words stay with you long after they're spoken. I should have walked away that night. God knows I should have. But what he said shattered everything I thought I knew about love, about loyalty, about myself. It wasn't some grand confession. It wasn't even loud. It was quiet, almost like a whisper, but it hit me like a scream. And the worst part? It felt like the truth. You know that moment when everything around you just stops? Like the air feels thicker, your heart slows down, but your mind starts spinning faster than ever? That's what it felt like. One sentence. Just one. And suddenly, I wasn't the same woman anymore. I wish I could tell you I left. I wish I could say I stood up, held onto my dignity, and walked right out of that room. But I didn't. I stayed. And everything changed. It's been months, and that night still plays in my head like it happened yesterday. Sometimes it creeps in when I'm brushing my teeth. Or when I'm lying next to my husband, pretending to be asleep. Sometimes it hits me when I'm just sitting alone in the car, staring at the steering wheel, wondering who I've become. You ever feel like you've lived your whole life playing a role? And then, in one moment, someone sees the real you. Not the wife, not the mother, not the caretaker, just you. And it feels so good to be seen. It almost makes you forget that being seen by the wrong person can destroy everything. This story, it's not clean, it's not easy, but it's real. And if you've ever loved someone, been ignored by someone, or needed someone at the exact wrong time, then you might just understand why I didn't walk away. Subscribe now if you believe stories can reveal the deepest corners of the human soul, because this one will leave you questioning everything. Daniel barely looked at me anymore. I don't mean that in a dramatic, over-the-top kind of way. I mean, truly. He could walk into a room, glance right past me, and act like I wasn't even there. Like I was just part of the furniture, something expected, familiar, unnoticed. We'd been married for 12 years. 12 long, quiet, functional years. No big blowouts, no scandals. Just slow, dull erosion. Like a once beautiful painting left out in the rain, fading. Most nights, I'd sit at the edge of our bed in my robe, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to care that he was still downstairs buried in work emails or glued to the TV. He wasn't cruel. He didn't cheat. He just stopped seeing me. And after a while, I stopped looking for his eyes too. Our conversations? They turned into daily transactions. Did you pick up the dry cleaning? Don't forget Mia's dentist appointment. Pass me the remote. Some nights I'd catch myself whispering, hello, into the silence of our bedroom. Just to hear the sound of someone acknowledging me, even if it was only me. Then, Jared arrived. Daniel's old college friend. They hadn't seen each other in years, but out of nowhere, he called saying he'd be in town for a few days. Needed a place to crash. Daniel didn't even ask, he just told me. Like I was the hotel receptionist. I wasn't thrilled at first. I didn't feel like playing hostess. But then Jared walked through the door. And everything shifted. He had this easy charm about him, this warmth that filled the room. He smiled like he meant it. He looked at you when you talked. He laughed with his whole chest, like someone who wasn't weighed down by life. And he noticed things. Not just the big stuff, but the little, silly things no one ever comments on. New curtains, he said, the first night. They make the room feel cozy. I blinked. I had bought those curtains 2 months ago. Daniel hadn't said a word. And then, you wear your hair different now, right? I remember it being longer in those old photos. It wasn't flirtatious, it was thoughtful. I felt seen. Like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room and let the air in. Our house was quiet, tucked away in a sleepy little neighborhood. Mid-autumn meant the leaves outside were the color of fire, burnt oranges, deep reds, fading yellows. But inside, it was cold. Not temperature-wise, just emotionally cold. Daniel came and went like clockwork. Early morning coffee, keys jingling, the distant sound of his car pulling out. Jared, though, he stayed back. Worked remotely. He made his own coffee. Washed his own cup. He even offered to cook dinner one night without being asked. I caught myself lingering in the kitchen more when he was around. laughing at jokes that weren't even that funny, fixing my hair before coming downstairs. I wasn't trying to be anything. But when someone finally looks at you after years of being invisible, you forget what that kind of warmth can feel like. And you start to crave it, quietly, secretly, shamefully. One night, Daniel had to fly out for a last-minute work meeting. Just one night. He barely kissed me goodbye. Said something like, "You'll be fine, right?" And I nodded, of course. I always was. That night, it was just me and Jared. The fireplace was on, the room dim. I had poured myself a glass of wine. He sat on the opposite end of the couch, watching some old documentary and making side comments that made me laugh way more than they should have. And in that soft, still silence of mid-autumn, something started to stir. Not in a dramatic, sudden way, but slow, dangerous, undeniable. Something I hadn't felt in years. I didn't know it then, but that night would change everything. And not because of what happened, but because of what was said. What came next, I'll never forget. And if you've ever longed for something more than duty, you might understand why. Keep watching. The story's just beginning. That night started like any other. No plans, no expectations. Just me reheating leftovers from the night before, some roasted chicken, mashed potatoes. I had lit a candle on the dining table without thinking, mostly out of habit. I liked the way it softened the room, made the house feel less empty. Daniel never noticed those small touches anymore. But Jared did. He walked into the dining room, freshly showered, in a simple gray t-shirt, still damp hair pushed back, and he paused for a second. He looked around the table like he was seeing something alive. Then he smiled at me, not a polite, passing smile, but one that stayed. "Wow," he said, pulling out the chair across from me. "You always make things feel so warm, even when it's just leftovers." I laughed it off, but I felt my cheeks flush. No one had said something like that to me in so long, not even close. And it wasn't just the words, it was the way he said it. Like he meant it. Like I mattered. We sat and ate, just the two of us. The candle flickered between us, casting gentle shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind had picked up. You could hear the leaves brushing against the windows like fingertips. The whole world felt like it was holding its breath. At first, we talked about nothing, random stories from their college days, Jared teasing Daniel for being uptight, even back then. I laughed. I genuinely laughed. Then he asked about me. Not, "How's life?" in a distant, polite way, but real questions. "What did you want to do before all this?" he asked. I blinked. All this. You know, the house, the marriage, the routine. What did you want, back when you were still dreaming? It caught me off guard. I didn't have an answer, not one I was proud of. I had wanted to travel. Write. Teach yoga, believe it or not. I wanted to feel alive. Free. Seen. I told him that. Not all of it, but enough. And then he said it, quietly, without breaking eye contact. "You still deserve to be seen." That sentence. It hit me in a place I didn't know was still sore. I laughed at first, trying to shake it off. "Come on," I said, "don't get all poetic on me now." But he didn't laugh. He just looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "I'm not being poetic. I'm being honest." I felt my throat tighten, like I couldn't swallow. I looked away, toward the candlelight flickering across the wood grain of the table. I suddenly felt exposed, but not in a bad way. In a way that made me feel real again. We moved into the kitchen after dinner. I was rinsing off plates, and he leaned against the counter with a glass of wine, swirling it lazily. The conversation shifted deeper, slower. We talked about regrets, about timing, about how life rarely turns out the way we planned. He told me about a woman he once loved, but didn't fight hard enough for. I told him about the version of myself I missed. There was no flirting, no touching, nothing inappropriate. But emotionally, that night, something changed. Some invisible line was crossed. Not loud, not messy, just crossed. Looking back now, I think that was the moment my heart stepped outside of my marriage. Not with intention. Not even with full awareness. But with quiet desperation. with the ache of being seen, finally, after so many years in the dark. And I didn't stop it. I didn't pull back. Because in that moment, I didn't want to. What happened next only made that crack grow wider. And by the time I realized how deep it had gone, it was already too late. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there in the dark, my back to Daniel, staring at the wall, blinking into the silence. His breathing was steady, peaceful, like he had no idea anything had shifted. And maybe to him, nothing had. But inside me, it was like someone had cracked open a part of my soul I didn't know was still alive. I kept replaying Jared's voice in my head. You still deserve to be seen. It echoed in the quiet like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. It wasn't even what he said. It was the way he said it. Like he was speaking to the woman I used to be, before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's responsibility. Before I forgot I was someone at all. I felt guilty. Not because I had done anything, but because I felt something. That ache, that thrill, that terrifying flutter in my stomach that I hadn't felt in, what? Years? I didn't plan for any of this. I wasn't out looking for attention. But something in me, something was starving. And Jared, without even trying, offered me a taste of something I had forgotten I even hungered for. I tried to shake it off the next morning. I really did. I avoided the kitchen until I heard Jared leave for a walk. I made myself busy, laundry, dishes, anything to distract myself. When he came back, I kept my distance. I spoke only when necessary. I didn't let our eyes linger. But somehow it made it worse. Because now I was thinking about it, anticipating it, wondering if he noticed the space I was trying to create, wondering if he was thinking about it too. I hated myself for how much I noticed him. The way he ran a hand through his hair when he was focused. The way he always said thank you, even for the smallest things. The way he smiled at Mia when she told a ridiculous joke. The kind of smile that meant it. Daniel used to smile at me like that. Used to. I felt trapped in my own head. Like I was constantly wrestling two versions of myself. The loyal wife. And the woman quietly yearning to be something more than just tolerated. I started remembering all the times I had tried to talk to Daniel. The nights I reached for him in bed, only for him to turn the other way. The time I got a new haircut and he didn't even blink. The night I cried in the bathroom and he never came to check why. I used to tell myself, that's marriage. That's just what happens over time. But deep down, I never stopped hoping someone might still see me. I wasn't planning to betray anyone. That's not who I am. But feelings don't follow rules. And hearts don't understand boundaries the way mine do. And Jared, he wasn't trying to make this happen either. He was just being human, kind, present, real. And in a world where I felt like a ghost in my own home. That kind of presence felt dangerously close to a lifeline. I told myself it would pass. That it was just loneliness playing tricks on me. That if I just stayed busy, kept a little more distance, it would fade. But feelings don't fade that easily. And the more I tried to suppress it, the stronger it pulled. I wasn't in control anymore. I was drifting. Slowly, quietly. And part of me didn't want to stop. Because being wanted, even if only in my imagination, felt better than being forgotten. It didn't stop. No matter how many times I told myself to let it go, to not feel anything, to keep it innocent. It didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. Jared started lingering in conversations just a little longer than necessary. Not in a way that anyone else would notice, not Daniel, not even Mia. But I noticed. He'd ask a follow-up question after most people would have moved on. He'd pause when I spoke, like he was actually listening, not just waiting for his turn to talk. His eyes would stay on mine a second longer than what's considered polite. And our touches. They were still innocent. Technically. A hand brushing mine when I passed him a plate. A light touch on my back as we crossed paths in the hallway. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could point to and say, that was wrong. But I felt every single one of them. Like sparks buried under skin. Like something that wanted to catch fire but knew it shouldn't. One night, Daniel had to work late, again. He texted that he wouldn't be home until after midnight. So I made dinner for just me and Mia. Jared offered to help with dishes afterward, and I let him. I hated how much I looked forward to these moments. I hated how much effort I suddenly put into how I looked, even at home. I hated that I cared what Jared thought of me. Later, after Mia went to bed, I put on a movie. Just background noise. Something to fill the silence. Jared sat down next to me on the couch, not too close, but closer than before. We didn't talk much at first. Just sat there, side by side, as the movie played. I don't even remember what we were watching, because all I could feel was the space between us. The warmth of his arm a few inches from mine. The steady rise and fall of his breathing. The way the air suddenly felt too heavy to inhale normally. And then, without turning his head, still staring at the screen, he whispered, "If you were mine, I'd never let you feel this alone." My heart stopped. Everything around me, the movie, the room, the flicker of the TV screen, blurred into nothing. All I could hear was the pounding in my chest. All I could feel was the ache in my throat and the weight of those words wrapping around me like a secret I hadn't dared say out loud. I wanted to pretend I didn't hear him. I wanted to laugh, to change the subject, to stand up and walk away. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I just sat there, frozen. Every part of me screaming that this was the moment. The moment I could stop it. The moment I should walk away. But instead, I turned to him. Slowly, carefully. Our eyes met. And in that instant, everything else disappeared. The years of silence in my marriage. The numbness I had grown used to. The walls I had built around my heart, they all cracked, just a little. He didn't move closer. He didn't pressure me. He just looked at me with this quiet sadness, like he already knew what I was feeling, even if I hadn't said a word. I leaned in. Only slightly. So slight it could have been explained away. But in that moment, the space between us wasn't physical, it was emotional. And I crossed it. Then I caught myself. Snapped back. I stood up quickly, muttered something about needing water, and practically ran to the kitchen. I gripped the counter until my knuckles turned white. My chest was rising and falling like I had just run a mile. I didn't kiss him. But I wanted to. And that terrified me. Because once you want something like that, even if you don't act on it, you've already crossed a line you can't uncross. I went to bed early that night. Locked the door behind me. Daniel came home hours later, didn't even notice I wasn't asleep beside him. And Jared. He didn't say a word the next morning. But everything had changed. Not out loud. Not visibly. But inside us, something had shifted. And the worst part? I couldn't tell if I was more afraid of what might happen next. Or of it never happening at all. The night before Jared left felt different from the start. There was this quiet hanging in the air, not awkward, not forced, just heavy. Like we both knew something was ending, or maybe beginning, and neither of us wanted to say it out loud. Daniel had gone to bed early. He had a big meeting in the morning. He gave Jared a quick pat on the back and mumbled, "Safe travels," like Jared was just some passing visitor, not the man who had been living in our home for nearly a week. And then he disappeared upstairs, just like always. I stood in the kitchen, rinsing out mugs we didn't even drink from. My hands were shaking, just a little. Jared leaned against the doorway, watching me. Not in a way that made me uncomfortable, he never made me feel that way. It was the kind of look that hurt, because it saw too much. "I guess this is it," he said quietly. I nodded, drying my hands on a towel I didn't remember grabbing. "Thanks for letting me stay," he added. "I know I kind of just showed up." "You were no trouble," I whispered. "It was nice having you here." We both stood there in silence for a beat too long. I didn't want him to go. I didn't want to admit how badly I didn't want him to go. Because when he left, so would this strange little world we'd created, this quiet emotional bubble that made me feel alive again. "I'll walk you to the guest room," I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking. He smiled, that sad smile that never reached his eyes, and followed me down the hall. The room was dim, a suitcase already zipped on the bed, his jacket slung over the chair. I stood in the doorway, unsure what to say, unsure how to say goodbye without giving away everything. He turned to face me. I meant what I said the other night, he said. My breath caught. You're not living, you're surviving. And you don't have to. His voice was soft, but firm. Like he'd been waiting to say it, like he needed me to hear it. I see you, he added, stepping just a little closer. Not just the wife or the mother. You. That was it. The wall I had worked so hard to hold up crumbled in an instant. I broke. The tears came without warning, slipping down my cheeks as I tried to smile, tried to thank him, tried to hold myself together. But I couldn't, because in that moment, it wasn't just about Jared. It was about everything I had buried inside for years. The silence, the rejection, the ache of being invisible. And he just stood there, not trying to fix it, not trying to take advantage, just being there. I stepped closer without meaning to. He brushed a tear from my cheek with the back of his hand, so gently I almost didn't feel it. And then, we kissed. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't reckless. It was soft, deep, emotional. Like we were saying all the things we didn't know how to say out loud. Like we were breathing life into parts of ourselves we thought had died. For those few seconds, nothing else existed. Not the house. Not the marriage. Not the consequences. Just two people, aching to feel something real. And then I pulled away. Slowly, carefully. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I looked at him, trying to find the shame I thought I'd feel. But it wasn't there. My heart was breaking. Not because I kissed him, but because I didn't hate it. Because it felt like the first honest moment I'd had in years. I whispered, "Good night," and walked away before I could think. I closed the door to my bedroom and leaned against it, pressing my forehead to the wood, trying to hold in the sobs building in my chest. Daniel stirred in bed but didn't wake. And I stood there in the dark, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. Not because I had betrayed him, but because I finally understood just how far gone I already was. The next morning, he was gone. No note. No text. No goodbye. Just gone. His guest room was spotless. The bed was made. The suitcase was gone. And with it, everything that had filled that space, his presence, his warmth, his eyes that looked right through the shell and into something deeper. Daniel stood in the kitchen, sipping his coffee, scrolling through his phone like nothing was different. Like the house hadn't held something fragile and sacred just hours before. Like the air didn't still hum with the echo of a kiss that never should have happened. I stood there, barefoot, pretending to look for something in the fridge I didn't need. My body moved like it always did, going through the routine. But I wasn't in it anymore. I couldn't even look at Daniel. Not because I was afraid of what he might see, but because I already knew what he wouldn't. He wouldn't see the storm inside me. He wouldn't see the guilt crawling under my skin. He wouldn't see the version of me that had cracked open like glass in Jared's hands. That morning was the first time I realized how easy it is to live a lie, how you can stand in front of someone, smile, nod, make coffee, say, "I love you," and still be somewhere else entirely. I avoided mirrors after that. I'd walk past them and look away, not because I was afraid of what I'd see, but because I didn't recognize her anymore. The woman with tired eyes. Forced smiles. A secret sitting on her chest like a boulder. I had crossed a line. Not with my body, maybe, but with something far more dangerous, my heart. And the thing about emotional betrayal is, it doesn't leave bruises. You can't point to it and say there. That's where it hurts. It just lives inside you. I'd stand at the sink washing dishes and catch my mind drifting to him. To the way he said my name like it meant something. To the way he stood still when I cried, didn't try to fix me, just stayed. To the kiss. That kiss. That soft, quiet kiss that still burned on my lips days later. Daniel didn't notice the change. Or maybe he did, but he was too distracted to care. Too buried in spreadsheets and deadlines and whatever else he used to keep the world at arm's length. We still slept in the same bed. Still made plans. Still smiled in front of Mia like everything was fine. But every night, when he turned over and drifted into sleep, I lay wide awake, staring into the dark, wondering when I'd lost myself. And if I could ever find a way back. The strange thing is, I didn't feel like I had cheated in the traditional sense. I hadn't torn off my clothes. I hadn't broken vows in a hotel room. But I had given something sacred to someone who wasn't mine. And once you do that, there's no way to reclaim it. I started to question everything. The way I kissed Daniel felt different now, forced, cold, almost like I was trying to convince myself it still meant something. I couldn't laugh at his jokes. I couldn't talk about my day with the same ease, because every sentence felt like a lie. He hadn't changed. But I had. I was no longer the woman waiting for him to notice her. Now I was the woman who had been noticed and couldn't forget how that felt. Jared had left the house. But he hadn't left me. He was in my head, my chest, my conscience. His absence screamed louder than his presence ever did. And in the quiet moments, the ones when Daniel wasn't looking, I'd find myself wondering, did he feel it too? Was it real for him? Or was I just another moment he'd leave behind? I didn't have answers. All I had was silence. And a marriage I no longer knew how to be in. It's strange, the way silence becomes your companion after something like that. You go through the motions. You play the part. You smile when you're supposed to, nod at the right moments, fold the laundry, cook dinner, clean the crumbs off the counter like everything's normal. But inside, it's chaos. A constant, looping reel of what-ifs and what have I done? I started asking myself questions I never thought I'd ask. Was this worse than cheating? Is emotional betrayal, giving your thoughts, your dreams, your longing to someone else, worse than something physical? Because nothing really happened, right? Just a kiss. One kiss. But when I looked at Daniel, I knew the answer. Because it wasn't the kiss that broke me. It was the fact that I wanted it. It was the emotional closeness I shared with someone else, someone who wasn't my husband. And the scariest part? It wasn't just about Jared. It was about me. About who I had become in this life I built. This life that was supposed to mean something. This home, this marriage, this family. When did I start shrinking just to keep the peace? When did I stop asking for what I needed because I got tired of hearing, I'm busy, or can we talk about this later? And when did later become never? I wasn't chasing some fairy tale. I wasn't expecting perfection. I just wanted to feel, to be seen, heard, touched not just with hands, but with presence. And Jared, he gave me that. Without even trying. Just by being there. Just by noticing. But now I was left with this weight. A secret that sat in my chest like a stone I couldn't swallow. I thought about telling Daniel. I played it out in my head dozens of times. Sitting across from him at the kitchen table, hands trembling, eyes full of shame, saying, something happened. Not much, but enough. But every time I imagined it, I saw it all fall apart. The house, the family dinners, the co-parenting, the little life we had somehow managed to keep afloat all these years. One truth could tear it all down. And yet, the lie was eating me alive. Every day I kept it inside, it grew. Like a shadow that followed me everywhere, into the grocery store, the school pickups, the bedroom. And what made it worse was that I wasn't even sure what I was mourning. Was I mourning the man I kissed? Or the woman I used to be before I stopped recognizing my own reflection? Sometimes I'd sit in the bathtub, knees pulled to my chest, and replay Jared's voice in my head. You don't have to survive, you can live. It haunted me, because it was true. I had been surviving for years. Quietly, dutifully, resentfully, and for one fleeting moment with him. I felt like I had taken a breath for the first time in a decade. But how do I live now? How do I move forward, knowing the truth would burn it all down? And even if I came clean, what then? Would it fix anything? Would Daniel suddenly become the man I needed him to be? Would I even want him to? Or would I just become the villain in my own story, forever marked by one stolen kiss and a heart that wandered too far? There are no neat answers. No tidy resolutions. Just questions. And silence. And the aching truth that sometimes the worst betrayals aren't the ones that break your vows. They're the ones that make you feel alive again. When you know you're not supposed to. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Only that I couldn't unfeel what had been felt. And I couldn't unknow the version of me that Jared had woken up. So now I carry it. The guilt, the ache, the longing, and the terrifying knowledge that one small moment can change everything. Forever. Have you ever felt emotionally invisible? Like you're walking through your own home, breathing the same air as someone you once loved. But somehow, they can't see you anymore? Like you've become this quiet presence, doing the laundry, setting the table, packing lunches, while your heart just fades further and further into the background. Because that's what it felt like for me. I wasn't chasing excitement. I wasn't looking to hurt anyone. I was just aching for connection, for warmth, for something real. And in one moment, I found it. Not where I should have. Not with the person I was married to, but with someone who saw the version of me I had buried a long time ago. So now I'm asking you, was it betrayal? Or was it just the breaking point of years of feeling unseen? If you were in my shoes, if your heart had been starved for that long, what would you have done? Would you have kissed him? Would you have stopped it? Or would you have let yourself feel, just once? I know there are no easy answers, but I also know I'm not alone. So please, tell me your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you've ever been here. Tell me if you've ever questioned everything, just for one moment of feeling alive again. And if you want more stories like this, stories that are raw, honest, and unafraid to look at the messy truth of being human, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, it's in the stories of strangers that we find pieces of ourselves. Sometimes, betrayal doesn't start with a kiss. It starts much earlier. It starts with silence. With the way two people slowly stop reaching for each other. With all the conversations left unsaid. With the quiet closing of doors that used to swing wide open. With glances that go unreturned, touches that fade, smiles that feel more like muscle memory than real connection. It starts with neglect. With loneliness that settles in like dust, quiet, constant, almost invisible. Until one day, someone else notices you. And suddenly, that silence? It's suffocating. I should have walked away that night. I knew it. I felt it in my gut, in my chest, in the way my fingers trembled when he looked at me like I still mattered. But I didn't. And now, I live with that choice. Not in some grand, dramatic way, but in the little things. In the way I flinch when Daniel touches me. In the way I hear Jared's words in my head when the house goes quiet. In the way I avoid my own reflection, because it reminds me of the woman I became in that moment. Some wounds don't bleed. They don't scream. They whisper. They whisper in the stillness. In the guilt. In the memories you replay at night when no one's watching. And those wounds. Those are the ones that never truly heal. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Not just to the story, but to the feeling behind it. Because sometimes, just being heard is a kind of healing, too.